All right, let's get this show on the road, and we can dive in and really talk through this topic. I'm excited. This is a passion of mine these days, and I'm really excited to share some of the things I've been doing and some of the thoughts that I've had. As it says there, I've been a little obsessed with AI lately, talking about it a lot, working with it, developing with it, and definitely, in my mind, taking some different approaches that I think are interesting and valuable for all of us as we're kind of looking at the future of AI. So let's go ahead and dive in. For those of you that may not know me, I'm Andy Helko. I've had Insivia for over 22 years. I actually started as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 22-year-old out of college, and now I'm an old 44-year-old man. I do have a mohawk now, which is a whole different story. And if you'd like to do a meet and greet, I'd be happy to tell you about the mohawk. But AI for me, about 10 years ago, interestingly enough, way before all this crazy hype that we've been seeing, AI, I was talking about in a futurist talk that I used to do around to local chambers of commerce and other events. And the funny thing is, I would talk about all of these different technologies, self-driving cars, AI, things in healthcare. And I remember that there were a lot of the folks that were small businesses, and they would walk out of the room, and a lot of them would come up to me after, and they would be afraid. They would be scared. And this is 10 years ago. And so it's something that's been in my mind and on the horizon for me for a very long time. And definitely something that is an interesting topic for everyone in how they think it's going to impact them. If you fast forward to today, the reason I'm into it in a deep way is I've been working on a platform, and this is a tool that kind of takes all the thoughts and things that I've been doing, and really pulls together AI in a really interesting way. And so that's part of the reason that I'm really interested in how to use AI for strategic planning. So I've been doing AI events and AI forums, moderated a session not too long ago, and definitely having some heated, nerdy conversations about AI and whether it is something to be really afraid of or something to not worry too much about. I think there are different paths that can be taken. There is a side where, we don't reach the AI pinnacle because there's issues with having enough power on the grid because AI consumes so much power. We just physically can't achieve certain things. On the other side, there is a lot of fear. I actually just watched this morning an AI video that was created of world leaders doing different things, that were not good. And it scared me. It's one of the first times that I've watched an AI generated video and felt a little bit scared because of how accurate and perfect it was at portraying these people. And that's generative AI today. And so I think there are different paths that we can go. I'll be honest, I tend to be on the side of realism that it's great to think of all the great things that it can accomplish, but I wouldn't be smart if I didn't think about all of the possibilities that are concerning and, can significantly change our society and change how we work and just change everything. And so I think it's important to not necessarily look at it with rosy colored glasses, but also not be afraid, but make sure that you understand it all, because it does have to be something that I think is part of all of our understanding, because it's not going away. And one of the biggest things that I typically think with AI is, and scares me a little bit, is the speed, right? When we look at something like electricity, you can see here, it took 50 years to go from 10% to 99% adoption. social media, much shorter time span of 15 years. Those of you that have been around in technology, you've seen different things and how fast they can move. AI is speeding along so fast. I work with a lot of technology and software companies, and I will tell you that every single one of them is working on integrating AI into their product. We are seeing it in the news. People are using it from a consumer perspective. They're using it from a business perspective. And the reality is that the adoption rate is just astounding at this point. And I think that's one of the differences for me with AI versus other technologies, is just how fast, not only is it being adopted, but where it could be headed in the next 2, 3, or 5 years. It's one thing to sit here today and say, oh, it doesn't impact me a lot. I can continue to do my job as I do. Maybe I'm using it for very light tasks. But if you're really looking at it, thinking 3 years or 5 years ahead, if it continues at the speed that it is, it's just going to be something that is you're not going to be able to move away from. We're about to have Apple launch a new phone where AI and their Apple Intelligence is built in and very key. They are a true driver of consumer use of AI. And so I really do think we've seen over the last couple of years, over the last 12 months, extreme growth. Just imagine what is going to happen here in the very near future. So even though it feels like a hype cycle, I don't think it's unwarranted. Now, there's a concept that I've always loved, and it typically has to do with climate change, is the heretic versus the wizard. The heretic is the person that is coming out and saying, oh my God, we've got to stop this. We have to pull back everything. They're worried about it. They're telling everyone about it. The wizard, on the other hand, is saying, we're going to solve the problem. I'm going to come up with a solution. And when you look at it from a climate change perspective, it's very interesting, of folks that want to pull back, make regulations, and others that want to say, let's create technologies to solve the problem. And that's the difference between the heretic and the wizard. I now have really started to think about that with AI, is that there are a lot of folks out there that are talking about the potential challenges and fears, or what it could do, the huge benefits. And then there's other folks that are adopting it and they're really using it. And I think if you've seen that meme where they talk about, you're not going to be replaced by AI, but you're going to be replaced by someone that is able to use AI, is right. And so that's the difference between that heretic and wizard, is that if you're right now learning, involving, and just being on this webinar is obviously a sign of that you are really in the right seat for the wizard to leverage this and come up with solutions. So I really love always this idea of the heretic and wizard. I do think it's a great thought experiment that you can use in a lot of different scenarios. So just diving a little bit more into AI as we kind of get into this story of how it gets to critical thinking and strategic planning. If you're not familiar, there's generative AI and predictive AI. Both have been around a little bit for a while, predictive a little bit longer, but predictive is really about recognizing patterns. When we think of that, I often use the story of doctors and predictive AI being able to scan or look at MRI scans and detect cancer. And, I always kind of make the joke that I would much rather have a computer with 1 million scans under its belt and this predictive technology diagnose me versus a doctor who might not have had his coffee that morning or had an argument with his wife. And so predictive AI, to me, is very interesting in how it can impact the world. One scary thing is you've might have heard all the stories that they're putting price placards, electronic digital ones in a lot of the stores like Walmart, etc. But think of the model in predictive where it can look at what is the temperature outside, what events are going on locally, time of day, and it can surge or reduce prices of every single item in the store based off of that. So if there's a concert, within 2 miles, the temperature is over 80 degrees, and it's 3 o'clock right before the concert, that your drink prices go up by 10 cents. So predictive AI is a really interesting thing, both good, solving health problems, also scary in how it can impact us. Generative AI, which is the thing that's gotten all the hype lately, is really about creation. It can create text, it can create images, create videos. I just talked about that video that really scared me, just because it's so accurate. But generative AI takes a ton of processing power. That's why people say that there's some limitations with our electric grid and the ability to have the compute power. But it has really, I think, bucked the trend of what we see with AI, and that's why it became such a hype. All of a sudden, we can create these things, and we're getting answers for stuff. And so generative AI and predictive AI, they can work together. I think there's a future where they work together even more to do much bigger things. Again, my mindset's not in, what's happening in the next 6 months, but what's happening in the next 3 to 5 years with some of these technologies. And so that kind of gets to that point of, what do the next couple of years look like? One thing that I used to always say in the futures talk that I did 10 years ago was, to me, is the real power for any technology is when things start merging and integrating. And I think we're still in that stage with AI generally, is that, a lot of people, it's become easier to integrate into products now that you've got things like APIs from ChatGPT, et cetera. And I think you're only going to see that grow, is the ability to integrate it with huge data sets, with other technologies, having different technologies or platforms or data sets merge and connect information to create new predictions or new generative AI pieces. And so for me, as I look to this like future trend, it really is about not only that adoption, but how you imagine these things coming together. So starting to get into the strategic side of this, and where I'm really driving, is that there are a lot of people, when I talk about the skeptics, that talk about AI, generative AI, especially as, just a task replacement. I just read an article that went on and on about how, generative AI can only create your first draft and you really need a human involved. And I somewhat agree with that, but I also think that it does go beyond it. And I really do think critical thinking and strategic, thinking can happen with AI. And so that's really one of the drivers of what I'm looking at. Now, before I really get into the strategy part, I love to share this graphic, and it's something that drives why I'm so passionate about this right now. I've kind of found this place with the launch of AI and some of the things I've done in the past of being a technology nerd, a little bit of marketer, all of these different things, that I've found my ikigai, which is really about passion, mission, vocation, profession. Where can you make money? What do you really love? And to be honest, what I'm taking with what I've done with strategy with clients for the last 20 years and what's possible with technology and then AI, it has really put me in the center point more than I think so any time in my life. And this is a concept I've always been aware of, and I I really think that it's been a unique opportunity. So that's why I'm super passionate about this and love having conversations around it. So just to talk a little bit about how this journey goes and how I see strategic thinking with AI, for me in the early days, I started out thinking about methodology refinement, something that most consultants and other people that do strategy or even entrepreneurs that are thinking about their business is, how do I look at what methodologies are right for me to make the change that I need? But one of the things that I always dealt with is that a lot of the methodologies that are out there have blank spaces. There are scenarios where they say, here's where you need to fill in the gap, but they don't actually help you fill in the gap. And so for me, I started down this road many years ago of trying to take those blank spaces and break them apart into something that was much more solvable, something that I could go through. And so I ended up developing years ago these progressive exercises that filled the answers in the blank spaces. And that's how I did my, strategy work internally with clients. Is I could take methodologies and break them down into very structured exercises that would jump onto each other to solve problems. And then one of the things that I really wanted to do, this was a dream of mine 5 years ago, longer, was to digitize this process. I said, okay, I've been able to break it down. How do I now put it online? And so years ago, I started trying to build platforms to replicate some of these things that I was doing. But the reality is that I could never, ever really get to the point that I wanted to, because there was so much thinking and production in the process that it never really hit. And then all of a sudden, when generative AI, ChatGPT started taking off in the APIs, all of a sudden there was an epiphany for me of how I could take what I've been doing for 10 plus years and the way that I was looking at this and wanting to turn it into something that was accessible for everybody, and how I could bridge the gap of the problems that I was facing. And AI was what allowed me to do that. And so in this journey now, I've been really looking at how do you take generative AI beyond simple tasks, and how do you take it truly to something that can solve big hunkering problems? So as we get into it, what I have found is the biggest thing is breaking things into steps. It's really about taking anything complex and separating it into different pieces that you can become, again, progressive through it. And so for me, I developed, for filling those blank spaces, progressive exercises. Well, now with AI, you have to break it down further to really get the critical thinking and the strategy out of it that you want. And if you use ChatGPT on a regular basis, I do. If you do generic prompts, you usually get generic things from it that aren't that valuable. But what I found is if you really separate and break the problems up, you get a much better result. And so I just wanted to show a quick example here for us of how that works. So one of the things we built in our platform was an article writer. And there's a lot of those out there, but what I found is that, most of them produce generic stuff. If you just go straight to ChatGPT, you'll often get, you say, write me an article on X, you're going to get a couple paragraphs. They're not great, right? What you have to do is break it down. So the way we looked at it was breaking it into first a brief. And even if you can't see it here, it from an idea, an article idea, creates a title. It then I have it going out and I have it determining what's the need of the audience related to this. Then what's the summary? What are the specific ideas that we want to talk about? what's a unique position that we want to take with this article, because we want everything to be unique. And so this first couple of steps, this is actually a process behind the scenes that takes a couple of steps to break it out first into giving it these parameters. And then the next step that I found is what we actually do is we have the AI go out and it breaks this process into steps where what it'll actually do is create sections of the article, each of them driven by a purpose that goes back to that brief that we developed. And then we have the AI actually write each section of this individually. And it's actually using information from that original brief, the original idea. We actually, in this system, have brand voice, so it's telling you how it should sound. And then we're writing very specific sections with very specific instructions. And so instead, it's going through each one and writing them individually. And so the reason that I show and share that is this idea that when you look at generative AI, a lot of people try and do it in one fell swoop, right? They try and go in, put in a prompt and expect something great out. And that's why I think I've got a lot of skeptics that I talk to that go, it's not really, it'll never take over humans because like I put stuff in and I just get BS out. Well, it's just that they haven't unlocked what the true power of it is. So as we get into strategy, I did want to share, this is a concept I've had for a while, is the vision gap. I'm a big believer in strategy being extremely important for an organization. For me, it's a lot about how do you get out of the leadership's head, what direction they want to go as an organization, who they want to be, who they want to sell to, and making sure that not only the team internally understands it, but the outside world, whether that's prospects, customers, investors, or whatever it might be. And to me, that's called the vision gap, where there's a vision in the leader, entrepreneur, or leadership team's head, and there are all of these other audiences out there, and there's this gap in between them. So I love this chart. This is one of the things when I talk about strategy, because we're going to be talking about how we use AI for strategy here. But for me, this is one of my favorite core graphics, is that we have core values, what you should do, and they're forever. I'm such a big fan of getting the right core values. I believe that you should interview and hire based off of core values. You should do reviews on core values, because it's about having the right person there that even if they don't have the instructions, they have the DNA of what you want as a person within the organization. And so those core values are forever. As you get up into your why, vision, and mission, it's the life of the leader. It's why are we doing what we're doing? Then we develop targets every, 3 years, 3 years out or 5 years out. This is where are we going? Where are we headed as a company? Then we develop annual goals. This is what we need to achieve. We develop actions quarterly. How are we going to get to those goals? A schedule when that happens weekly. Every week we make our schedule. And then who is the accountability? Who is going to get this done daily? And to me, this sets up such a powerful foundation for an organization. And what I typically see is that folks come in and they set goals and they want things to be accountable, but they forgot about the core values, the why, vision, mission that give people the DNA and direction to be successful. Or maybe they develop targets and then they create some actions, but they're really not getting, again, the accountability, who's responsible for it. So I really look at this as that when you're missing bars of this pyramid, it's really hard to be successful as an organization. And again, the two at the bottom, core vision, core values, vision, mission, why, all of those things, to me, they truly are the thing that keeps everybody pointed towards the same spot on the horizon and moving towards it together. Otherwise, you have a team that people are headed off anywhere because they're making up their own vision in their head based off where they think you want to go as an organization. The other side of strategy that I look at is brand strategy, really understanding your target audiences. This is so important. It's one of the things that we talk about all the time. If you don't understand your audience, there is no way that you can influence them in marketing and sales to a great and powerful level. The other one I look at, value propositions, how we convince. I'm actually going to dive into value propositions much deeper in the next slide, but to me, it's one of the core pieces of a great brand strategy. Then we go down to positioning and voice. What are the core messages that drive our direction? Campaigns and messages that get down to, these are the specific things that we're going to, do to reach those audiences, channels and tactics, and then measure and optimize. So when I look at these two different pyramids, they really are a foundation for me as I look at success for organizations, that you need both, and you need the elements in almost all of these to really drive direction, to align, inspire, to really push people forward. So I'm going to dive into value propositions because it is actually one of the areas that I have the most passion about, or a lot of passion about. I really think it's important for organizations to define really strategic, smart value propositions. Value propositions are what make you unique. To me, they're the opportunity to create a narrative about your business that if you go in a room against competitors, those competitors go away because they can't compete. I'll just use my own company as an example. Years ago, we decided to narrow down only to work with software and tech companies. And so what that allowed us to do is go from city to city outside of where we were located as an agency and consultancy, and go into these rooms and say, this is our expertise. We've got 30 clients in this space. We've done this thing 20 times. We've hired people on our team that know this space. And you know what happens is the other folks that didn't have that unique value proposition couldn't compete. And so we may compete with local agencies in California, but they just fell away from the room because we had such a strong value proposition and unique position. And so I'm a big believer in really making sure that both strategically and with your brand, you're creating these really strong value propositions that help you not only differentiate in marketing, help you close deals, but really drive the entire story of your business. So I talked about how we take strategic processes and break them down into steps, which leads us to how we can leverage AI to be strategic. This is the process that I've used over the years to help companies develop value propositions in the right way. And so we would typically start out with defining personas, and that would be pretty detailed. We would go in and really understand pains and buying factors and motivations, and you do research on those audiences, and we would go out and you would get surveys, pull information from people internally. Then we would define the buying factors. That's what I usually started with was, what are the reasons that people buy? What is it that they want out of the organizations that they're deciding to choose from? You prioritize those. Then you look at your competitors and you group them. Then we would go through a process where we would compare the buying factors between ourselves and our competitors. So we rank it from 1 to 10. On customer service, we're a 10, and our 3 other competitors are a 5. And what you would get out of that is a delta for these different buying factors. There would be ones where you have a ton of difference in delta, and other ones where you were either the same or weaker. And that actually was what got you to your core value propositions. And then we would have to curate information. We would actually develop messaging around it. We would then create a moat. And then what we call entrenchment is strategies for how do you make yourself stronger and make that delta bigger. And so then as an organization, we've developed value propositions that we know our target audience wants. We are very different than our competitors in. We've developed compelling messaging around, and then we've determined strategies for how we can go deeper and become more valuable in those value propositions to really go to market strong. But the challenge is that this typically would take multiple sessions, a week or two to really get right, especially if you wanted to be smart and strategic. Enter AI, as I've kind of talked about. So AI really allows us to remove the bias and increase speed. As an example, I'll show you, we'll dive in right now, actually, just to show you some examples. But in our platform, we're able to research within a couple of seconds using AI pains and buying factors and other pieces that in the past, couple things happened. One, it would take a process of going out and cataloging information. And two, there was often a lot of bias. The people within an organization that we would ask have bias because they only see certain scenarios or they just have a gut emotion about it. And then if we would go out and ask customers, same thing. There's a lot of bias that was associated to it. So one of the powerful things with AI, and if you get the prompts and those steps perfectly right, is that you can actually find things that are unbiased and really do it super fast. As you saw, within a couple of seconds, I was able to pull in some of these ideas. And so now you can curate them, but something that used to take probably a couple of days and time for the team to go through now takes a few minutes to do. Same thing with competitors, is putting in your competitors and doing research on that side as well, is that you would put your competitors in, need to do research on them because you really want to understand their business before you actually rank. And so what you can do now with AI is we actually go out, scan a website, and then use AI to give us feedback and information about what are their key messages, how do they present themselves, what is their brand voice. So it can actually go out there, and that process, again, that for us used to take 24 to 48 hours or longer to do some research, bring that back, or have our clients do it, now is done in, a matter of minutes, if that at all. And now we get to where the real power is leveraging this stuff to really go through the process, right? And so I actually have Tony on his side. He's on the call. He already started his process. And so I explained to you that we ranked our buying factors first. So we would come in and we would look at, okay, what are the buying factors that are most important? And so now in real time, again, something in a room that would have taken a long time to rank and get everybody's scores, we're actually doing that in a couple of seconds, where we understand what are the most important buying factors, the reasons people choose an organization. And then from there, we can actually do that ranking. So we talked about it a little bit before, but I can now say for data and privacy, we are good. Our other competitor is weak. These guys don't even talk about it, and these guys are good. And then I can see that Tony over here is also ranking on his side. And so now we've got a scenario where, again, a process that took a long time to get right is happening in a couple of seconds. And then finally, we provide some context to this stuff. And so, here you can see we've now ranked, and if you have 1 or 20 people, you can rank them. And now that process that I just showed you that took 10, 15 steps in multiple days or weeks is now down to a couple of minutes, really to get out that we have, a high advantage score on easy integration, a pretty good advantage score on student engagement, and then a mediocre one on data privacy and security. And so now we know that these are things that our target audience wants. We prioritize the reasons that they buy. We now have compared ourselves to competitors and determined the 3 that have the greatest delta. And then we're able to fill in some curated information about why are we better, what proof do we have, and we can actually now come back and using AI can generate our messaging. And so now it's looking at that persona, it's looking at our competitors, it's looking at what we just went through in the exercise, and it's coming up with a value proposition for us in what we do. And it looks like we have some questions, so I want to make sure I'm answering those. How much of this presentation was Andy, and how much did AI help you generate this? Offer general percentage points. It's funny. There are some amazing tools for using AI to create presentations, and I didn't do that. So I probably would say the percentage is 20% of how much this AI helped me create this presentation. And what is the program you're using in these slides? Well, we've got Frictionless is our software, frictionlesshq.com. And so this is the software that we've been building to really take AI and do strategy with it. So again, what I really wanted to show in this presentation as I've kind of gone through is that there are a lot of people that see generative AI and AI generally as something that can just do minor tasks and it produces mediocre results. And I talk to a lot of folks and I say, hey, no, I think it's a tool that can honestly replace critical thinking jobs, not just jobs that we don't want to do or mediocre tasks. And the way that we found to do that is breaking things up. You break the strategy up, which is something that I've been working on for years. And then as you saw in the software, I use AI and I actually break up those pieces and feed the right information into it to now speed up the process a ton. And so again, what you can do is if you really think through almost anything that you're doing in your organization that's strategic, there are ways that even you can break that up and turn it into something using AI. And again, this is a process that we've really worked through is how do you break things up. And again, this is much different than going into ChatGPT and putting in a question and getting a single response. It's much more about what you'll see with AI in the future is creating multiple steps, integrating data, really pulling things together to produce true critical thinking, which does scare me a little bit because, again, part of my worldview is like you have to dive into it because it's not going to change. And in some ways, I'm working on building a software that I think replaces me in the future. So as we kind of come towards the end, just things that I've learned in this process. I've said it a couple of times. I'll repeat it again. Thinking of AI not as a task replacement, single task, just put it in there, but as a daisy chain of needs that you're solving a problem, whether it's that article that I showed, how we created an article where we built a brief first with details, then we actually created sections and an outline, then we drafted it. That produces a million times better result than if you just do a single prompt. So whether you're building your own software for it, you're using a software like ours, Frictionless HQ, or you're doing this in ChatGPT, break it up into pieces. And I'm going to leave some time for questions, but I always love this. I've actually been adding this as a bonus onto my presentations for almost 10 or 15 years, just because I love it. There's a book called Radical Candor, if you don't know it. And it's a great concept that if you care personally and challenge directly, it's radical candor. If you're silent but you care, it's ruinous empathy, because you empathize with people, but you're letting them continue how they are, whether it works or it doesn't. There's silence and you don't care about someone, which is manipulative insecurity. And then, of course, if you challenge directly people and you don't care about them, it's obnoxious aggression, which makes you an asshole at the end of the day. And so it's really about this idea that you care a ton about who you're talking to. I care about you guys. I want you to do better, but I'm willing to tell you something that you might not want to hear. And that's the radical candor. So powerful, whether it's with internal team members or it's with clients. And so now we had a nice 45-minute journey. I would love to answer questions if you have them. And then obviously, if you like Frictionless, we've got a free trial. Sign up at frictionlesshq.com. Reach out to me. Happy to walk you through it. If you're interested in talking about strategy or AI, we're doing a lot of that work. And then, finally, a lot of you folks are folks that I've been connected to at one point or another. If you'd love to catch up, shoot the breeze, go to helco.chat and you can schedule some time with me and we can reconnect and you can hear about why I have a mohawk. So questions, feel free to submit them and Tony is ready. But I appreciate everybody, if you're jumping off now, your time. I hope you learned something about AI, something about strategy, a little mix of both. All right. How does Frictionless compare to other software approximate investment? So, our software actually starts at about $39 a month, goes up to a couple hundred. That's with multiple team members. As far as comparison, the truth is, for me, I think there's so many tools out there that are focused on implementation execution, but almost none that think about strategy, critical thinking, and how you break apart strategic problems. And so from a comparison standpoint of what's out there, one of the reasons that I'm really passionate about this and we're creating it is I don't think people are solving these types of strategic problems in the way that we are. And so there's probably, few things that compare unless you get into the article writing, which is kind of everywhere. But again, most people don't break it up like we do either. I think that's what we've really tried to do, is look at this step process to get it right. But pretty affordable, great platform. I don't know. I feel like people are still on and maybe they put me on mute, or I should just talk about my mohawk. But I see Tony writing another question. So maybe we'll skip the mohawk talk and why I have it. All right. Sounds like we don't have any questions. Well, I appreciate everybody showing up. Again, if you're interested in any of these things, and especially AI, or how you do strategy with AI, please reach out. I would love to connect. I am hyper passionate about this topic. Okay, so someone said, tell us about the mohawk. All right. So I had a mohawk in college, right? And a couple of years ago, I used to always say to myself, I'm gonna do a mohawk again when I sell my business or whatever it might be, and I feel like I have nobody to impress. And I hit this moment in my life where I said, you know what? Doesn't matter. I don't have anybody to impress. I am who I am. I want to be who I am to the world. And so I put a mohawk in. I liked it and I kept it. And for me, the reason that I share the story is that I think it's about getting to this place in life where, you've got that confidence to be who you are, no matter how it looks. And so I get on calls with CEOs of $200 million companies with a mohawk, and I don't feel self-conscious about it one bit, and I love it. And so to me, it's a life lesson of get to that point where you are just who you are and live that. Someone actually has another question of, it's been insightful, but are there any things around copyright infringement when using AI? I don't have any direct resources. I could probably look it up, but it is such an interesting topic. I think what I've heard is that there's obviously all these lawsuits that are happening about the information that's scraped. I've heard people talk about the risk that if you use AI content now, in 2 years, it could become a scenario where it is infringing on copyright and you may have to pull it. I think it's one of those things right now that is such a wild west, and we're not going to know the answers for a while, and it's probably going to be in litigation for a long time. The easiest and best way is obviously if you create your own AI and train it off your own data, but that's challenging and expensive. And so definitely something that's a little bit scary and challenging. Yes. So someone asked if we're going to be sharing the webinar for rewatch. 100%. It'll actually be emailed out tomorrow and you'll have access to it there. And again, if you'd like, you got my schedule there. So feel free. I'd love to have a further conversation about it. Was that a good answer on the mohawk? That's all I'm talking about at this point. There's still 11 of you, so I feel like we have to just keep having a conversation, even though I can't hear of any of you. I can talk about my art, my dogs in the room. Why should we end this now when you're all still here, right? I love my art behind me, if you can see the Monopoly. So it's the Three Wise Monkeys, which is one of my favorite concepts. Hear no evil, see no evil. There's even a do no evil. There's actually a fourth monkey, and you see it with the Monopoly men. What does that tell you about corporate, world, right? So got a question. What's your model for agencies that use the platform? Actually, it's probably our biggest users today. Is agencies. They go in and you can create multiple clients and you can develop strategies for them, write content. And so you actually create a license per client and use it. So I would say today, probably 60 to 70% of we've got about 500 companies that are on the platform. I would say about 60% of those are probably related to agencies who are using it for their teams. And again, there's a free version. I'm happy to walk anybody through it, but try it, get some value. 7 people. What do I talk about now? I don't know. Larry. Thanks for the insights and your viewpoint on a rapid evolving. Thanks, Larry. Are you still on? No, he's gone. I went to high school with Larry. Thanks for joining. Look at that. Sonny, which of your packages are for agencies? So the way that it's set up actually for the agencies is you just sign up, and the packages that are currently on the Frictionless HQ site, you would just buy one of those for each of your clients. It's not kind of an all-inclusive thing. It's more like HubSpot or some of the other platforms out there, Hotjar, where you're buying a license per account or client that you're using it in. But one of the things that we really tried to do is make our AI integration unlimited, so folks can really use it. There's no like credits where you're going to run out and stop. You can kind of keep using it because there's a lot of powerful features in there. We actually have like SWOT analysis, which is really cool, creating your core vision and values, creating positioning, working on messaging, even strategizing campaigns. So we've got a lot of really powerful features in the platform that can help you understand audience, competitors, core values, vision, SWOT, value propositions, positioning, and on. So if you do use the platform for a client, it's just going to keep producing really great stuff. Thank you, guys. All right. For those couple that are still left, I love you. Have a great day.